part of this. So feel free to chime in, have your voices heard in the Q&A, right? But to kick things off, I know I read your bio. But if you can maybe you can tell the story better than I. They want to hear it from the horse's mouth. So
want to hear it from me.
Yeah, share a little bit about yourself and how you got into franchising.
So I started my career in a chain drugstore, helped build a chain in Savannah from 3 stores to 50, and the brothers who owned it sold the chain. They went out to California, bought one, invited me to go with them. I had this nice cushy office in the C-suite. My own boardroom. I was living high, and we had a lot of excess funds that I was investing every night. I thought we were in great shape until the buying department kept telling me we were getting put on COD, and I said, it's impossible. Now, remember, this is in the 70s. I'm investing $200,000-$300,000 every day in overnight paper. And so I go to my boss and said, well, I'm not responsible for the accounting department. You go find out what's going on. You know, he went back, he came back, and he said, you're moving your office. I said, hell, I like my office, I'm not moving. He said, no, you're moving. I said, why and where? He said, you're going to be our controller. I said, what do I know about being a controller? He said, more than I do. So I said, well, what's going on? He said, I found 5 5-drawer file cabinets full of unopened mail. So by the time controller obviously got fired, I became the controller. By the time I was able to sort all that out, we were underwater, and I ended up having to eliminate the entire middle management team over the course of a year. Bear Stearns was our finance company, and they sent somebody in to help turn the company around. Ultimately, I was an early victim of corporate downsizing, except back then we just called it getting fired. And so
great candidate too,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
Controller,
yeah.
right?
So I ended up with no car, a house, a mortgage, and a dog, and nothing to do. And so I figured maybe I should start a franchise. And I said, you know, hamburgers sound good. And I thought I'd start a hamburger chain, but I missed it just by that much. I called it McDougal's.
Wait a minute.
And
do you have the license to use that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I decided to go into coffee, because everybody's drinking coffee, but I called it Sunbucks.
Terrible name.
Yeah.
Terrible name.
So at any rate, my sister in Atlanta saw this cookie store start off, and she called me and said, you know, you're looking for something to do. You ought to come look at this cookie company that's in the mall. I said, how much are the cookies? She said they're 29 cents. I said, you know how many cookies you have to sell to pay the rent in one of those malls? Well, I shouldn't use the 4-letter word, but a blank load.
We're all adults here.
Exactly. Yeah. But at any rate, that's how I got into franchising. I went to Atlanta, I met with the founders, and I went back to California, did some research.
So did you know anything about, I mean, obviously it's a fun story, but did you know anything about franchising before your sister brought that up?
I knew nothing about franchising, absolutely nothing. But I learned quickly.
What are some of the things you learned?
Well, the first thing I should say, I guess, is the 2 founders of the company, one of whom has passed away, unfortunately, but the 2 founders and I became very close friends. I'm still close friends with the surviving founder. He and I speak probably every week. But I was lucky enough to get in on the ground floor, and I had 30 years of retail experience, and they had no retail experience. But they had a great process, and they had a great product. And so I was able to come in and help them build the company. And so it set the tone for allowing franchisees not just to be on the franchisee side, but to help build the entire company and learn what it's like to be a franchisor. And that helped me throughout my career to understand what it was like and what issues franchisors were facing.
So let's start first, but because that's really interesting. So, like, what do you think? Because you were, I think it's safe to say you were a very good franchisee, right? So, what do you think are some of the characteristics that makes a good franchisee?
I'm glad you asked me that question.
Brand?
I have no idea.
Do you want to start with a good franchisor then? What made them a good franchisor?
Well,
let's start with that first.
Let's talk about both. All right. Let's talk about franchisee first.
Sure.
And you guys really are right there because you're the one that's screening people to be franchisees. Certain people should not be franchisees. I think you all know that. franchisee has to understand that someone developed the system, and they tested the system, and the system works. And when you come in, you have to trust the system. If you want to open a hamburger place in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, or wherever, and you think you buy a McDonald's franchise, but you don't think your customers like seeds on the bun, you should not be a McDonald's franchisee. You should open Doc's Hamburgers. So
No,
this
no
is a-
seeds on those buns? Doc's hamburgers, no seeds?
No, that didn't work either.
All right.
I don't even like the ones I make at home. So this is the way we do it here. That's what a franchise is all about. This is the way we do it here. Veterans make great franchisees because veterans are used to following orders and following a system. People like me who have had many years in retail, if I'm talking to you in an interview and I'm going to say, you know what, the cookies they make are a little bit too big. If I take about 1/4 of an ounce off of each one, I could make a lot more money. I shouldn't be a franchisee. I have to do it the way they've developed the system. And you have a responsibility, I think, as the first screening, to find people who are willing to do that, who are willing to say, yes, I like the system. I want to learn from them. I'm not so smart that I can change everything. And so that makes a good franchisee. What makes a good franchisor?
But one thing also, no, before we move away from that, because you talked about, though, how they also sort of leveraged your strengths, right?
right.
So, well, and what's your opinion on that? Like, where does the franchisee, I guess, step up or contribute? Like, what is their place to add to the system?
Well, my view has always been that a franchise relationship is a partnership in every sense of the word except the legal. And
Nancy Lenard's here. We did not say partnership. Shh, go ahead.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, I'm just kidding.
I was strike that from the record. Franchisees have to contribute their experience to the system. A franchisee invented the Big Mac. You know, these ideas in my company, in Great American Cookies, we had one of my managers invented a product we call the Double Doozy, two cookies with a cream filling. One of my managers invented that product. And on the franchisor side, the franchisor founders sometimes are jealous of their system, and they're afraid to let somebody in sometimes, and they can't be. Franchisors have to understand that franchisees come into the system and have good ideas and learn from the system and can contribute. And our franchisees, one of our franchisees, you know, we're famous for the cookie cake. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Great American Cookies, but we do these giant pizza-sized cookies that we can decorate for you. You can have it in 5 minutes. You know, you don't have to call a week in advance to get it. One of our franchisees said, you know what, why don't we cut these into 8 slices and sell the slice in our stores? It became a huge amount of our sales.
So it's very much like a mentor-mentee relationship, and there's a great quote, Simon Sinek, which I think I mentioned yesterday too. You know, like it talks about his first mentor. He asked his mentor, well, like, will you be my mentor? And the mentor responded, well, only if you'll be mine, right? So it's kind of like you contribute, but just as much oftentimes the mentee gives lessons to the mentor as much as the mentor gives it to the mentee. So
one of my mentors, anyway,
Sure.
in franchising, one of my mentors was Bill Rosenberg. Bill was the founder of Dunkin' Donuts, and Bill was also the founder of the IFA. And Bill always said, you cannot have successful franchisees unless you have successful franchisors. And you can't have successful franchisors unless you have successful franchisees. And so in my view, as a franchisee, what do I want from my franchisor? I believe the franchisor's primary responsibility is to make me profitable. That's your responsibility as a franchisor. Unit economics, make your franchisees profitable. I don't care how much my franchisor makes. I want my franchisor to make money. That way they can support me, but not at my expense. Okay? We need to help each other be profitable.
Yeah. Now, is that how you got involved in IFA through Bill?
It is. What happened back in the 90s, there was a congressman from New York whose name was John LaFalce. And LaFalce had a relative whose franchisor was mistreating, or at least believed he was being mistreated by his franchisor and was introducing federal legislation, relationship legislation. The IFA in 1993 made a momentous decision that in order to be able to go to the Capitol Hill and represent all of franchising, they had to have all of franchising in the IFA. And so the board made a decision at a meeting in Oklahoma City to allow franchisees to become members. My franchisor, who was the past chair of the IFA, asked me to represent Great American Cookies on the very first Franchise Advisory Council at IFA, and I agreed to do that, and that's how I got involved.
Excellent. And, I mean, so then you started just as a member, right?
Yes.
And you want to talk a little bit, I guess, about like kind of your rise through the IFA and how that helped even you run your businesses better?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember some of the first meetings I went to. It was strange because we didn't know how to act, and the franchisors didn't know how to act. They were afraid of us, but they weren't afraid of us. We were afraid of them, but we weren't afraid of them. I remember I found myself the first week in 7 committees. I never saw the outside of a hotel at any meeting I ever attended. But I remember at the Franchise Relations Committee meeting, Gary Charwood, who was the master franchisee for Century 21, and he was the founder of Uniglobe Travel. He was the chairman at the time of that committee. And we went around the room and said, what's your vision of franchising? And I said, I thought I would like to see the day when we didn't have franchisor members and franchisee members and supplier members. We just had members. And it took a long time, a very long time to get there. But I think that's where we are today. I mean, certainly I'm recognized as a franchisee, but it's not like, oh, you're a franchisee member. You're a member.
No, you're a member, and there's the forums, which is important to have, but
Exactly.
you're a member. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. So guys, like I said, it looks like I didn't even have to mention that. Someone came in. So what's your greatest achievement, and what do you wish you could go back and do differently?
Oh, wow. Do I have to go back to birth? Or?
As far as you want. 100 years.
I think, look, when I came in to franchising, I remember going through training, and I remember, having so many years of retail, and I love to bake, I love to cook, and as going through training, I saw all these changes I thought I could make. I was going to be a horrible franchisee. Everything they were doing I felt was wrong. And then when I got my first store and opened the store and realized, you know what, these guys figured it out, it was right. So the first thing I did wrong was try to change the system, and it goes back to what I said makes a good franchisee, somebody who follows the system. Can I make changes? Sure, I could make changes, but the changes had to be made through the system. Go back to the franchisor and say, hey, we got this idea to put vanilla icing between 2 cookies and sell it for $4 instead of 39 cents. And they tested it, they liked it, and they did it. So early mistakes, for the first 3-4 years, we just fought with each other. And then one day we started talking about how do we make our bottom line better? How do we improve our construction so that we could reduce costs of building out a store? How do we do this better? And you know what? We started focusing on the bottom line, and we did it together. The mistake was trying to fight the system up at front. And that was an important lesson I learned. It helped me at IFA because I had already been through that. And I knew that some of the franchisees that came in with us in that first group in 1993 and 1994 came in with attitudes about franchisors are bad, and they rule the roost, and they're heavy-handed, and a lot of that was true. A lot of that was true, and so we just had to get through that. I had already been through it, and so it was easy for me to help lead the way with several of the other leaders that are still involved with the IFA.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because like you mentioned, you guys laid the groundwork and kind of showed the way you could perfect a process and a system to help units be very, very profitable. Exactly. Which then led to people choosing franchising. Like, because back then, it really wasn't an industry. It was just that businesses happened to use it as a model or whatever. And now, look at this room. It's sprung up to where franchising is an industry of itself, where people have a career not running stores, but selling franchises, recruiting franchisees, supporting the sales process, right? So what are some of those other changes you've seen that you probably didn't expect happening? And then what are maybe even some particular, specific trends that you're seeing that could impact specifically like franchise sales professionals
Yeah, I'm
moving
glad you
forward in
asked
this
that.
industry?
First of all, I'm really excited to see this FranLink thing. that is absolutely.
Are you on there yet? I think Doc actually was one of the very first people I actually showed FranLink to last summer.
Yeah. You know, I hope that all of you will take advantage of this because I'm sure you must be some people here from New York and Washington State. Anybody here from New York, Washington State? No? One hand or two in the back. California? California? Boy, you're
How'd you
lucky.
guys get in here?
You're lucky you're not in California. California, I don't know how many of you guys have been following this, but California is about to pass SB 919, which is going to be a franchise broker regulation law under the California Franchise Investment Law, FLI,
Something like that,
whatever it is,
Yeah.
whatever alphabet it is. If you're not familiar with this, you need to take a look at it because NASA, the regulators, not the space folks, the North American Securities Regulators Association, they're about to introduce or suggest federal legislation that's going to regulate brokers. It's going to pass. It's passed. It's already been read on the Senate floor this week in California. It's going to go over to the California Assembly, and it's going to get passed there. And NASA's regulations are even more strict than the California ones. And so I think you all need to make yourselves aware of it and what the requirements are. You can look it up, SB 919, and read what they're proposing. And I think because you have FranLink, you can get out ahead of this. And I don't think you should look at it as a detriment. I think you ought to look at it as positive. And if you guys get out in front of it, you could take the lead amongst all the broker associations that are out there. And you could lead the way by supporting it and helping to develop it so that it works in your favor. And I think that would give you an edge on everybody else because, again, as I said earlier, I look at you guys as the first line of defense in terms of screening out the people who don't belong in franchising. People who are litigious, who tend to, I remember talking, every franchisee in the system for the first 7 or 8 years, 10 years, called me because I was the first one, and I was the largest one. And I could tell which one should be. One guy was a jeweler, and he said to me, the lighting those guys use is all wrong. They need to use this kind of bulb and this kind of fixture, and he's in the jewelry business,
Yeah.
I don't need to have that bulb on my cookies. It doesn't work on food.
Yeah.
It works on diamonds,
Yeah.
not food.
Yeah.
Chocolate chips deserve a different kind of bulb.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no, he got in and he was out within a year. So I think this is the biggest risk for you. It's also the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, because when you hear the regulations like that, it's like sounds scary, bills, all the alphabet like you mentioned there, but really what they're looking for is kind of what we mentioned yesterday, the accreditation, self-regulation, an elevation and transparency of the broker's role in the sale, not like squashing brokers. Is that correct?
Exactly.
That's what I read at least.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Brokers are an asset. I mean, look at the sponsors you have here. You have some pretty big franchisor sponsors. You have franchisors out here in the audience. This act, by the way, for you franchisors, watch out. It's going to require you to have certain requirements too. You are going to have to comply with the regulations. You're not going to be able to hire a broker or a broker representative who's not registered in your state. And so you have the same obligations under this act as the brokers will.
Yes.
So you guys,
stay
you have
organized.
this great opportunity right now, and I think you should seize it.
Okay. On a lighter note, shifting gears a little bit, what's your favorite cookie?
All of them?
I think that came from Sean.
All
It
of
says
them?
anonymous, but
I don't know. It changes day by day. Some days I just like the sugar cookies. Some
Okay.
days
A little bit of a lighter one, better question here, though.
Yeah, oatmeal is
yeah. Okay, oatmeal. Good.
Yeah.
Good answer. You're a health person. Will be very happy with that. Okay, so if you're going to invest in a new franchise category, what would be the most interesting to you and why?
We're out of time. I'm sorry.
Doc's retired. The busiest retired guy I know. But
I think today I would probably want to look at one of the service industries, something along the lines that Neighborly does. But I'm not the kind of person that wants one unit. When I sat down with Arthur Karp, who unfortunately may he rest in peace, but when I sat down with him to talk about becoming a franchisee at Great American, I told him right off the bat, I said, I'm not going to be a single store operator. I want to open 10 or 20 stores. So in the service industry, a lot of those folks just want to have one unit. But I wouldn't be satisfied. A lot of those folks, once they have one unit, though, start to expand into 2, 3, 4, 10, and more. So I think I'd like to be in that service industry because you have that touch with the customer. And as soon as you start expanding, you lose it. So in my company, I used to, at a manager's meeting, I'd put an blank org chart up on the board. And there would be a block at the top, and I'd say, who belongs there? Well, half of them would say, well, I belong there. I'm the CEO, right? I'm supposed to be up there. No, I don't belong up there. Oh, well, the store manager. No, store manager doesn't belong up there. Well, the district manager. No, that's not who belongs. You all know who belongs up at the top block. Who is it?
customer.
The customer belongs in the top block on the org chart. And so I like that touch with the customers. I liked being in the stores. I like working next to the people who are on the front line talking to my customers because that's where the rubber meets the road. That's what's important. So I think I'd enjoy it.
Yeah, and this question that just came in is very timely because for this group here, your customers are the franchisees, right? And so what's one thing which I think is it's like that can kind of get explained during the franchise sales process too. One thing that you would want every new franchisee to know.
This is the way we do it here. Trust the system. You paid an initial franchise fee for the rights to use the system, right? In a lot of cases, you paid a lot of money. Secondly, you're paying a royalty, an ongoing royalty. What are you paying that for? You're paying it for the support, for the ongoing training, to follow the system, not to go off on a tangent and do your own thing. If you want to do your own thing, open Doc's Hamburgers or Doc's Cookies.
So are you going to be launching Doc's Hamburgers or Doc's Cookies soon, or
Yes.
you probably have a non-compete with the cookies, I would
It's
imagine.
in the pipeline.
It is?
Yeah.
Excellent.
I'm gonna do.
What about political office? Someone asked if you were going to be running for political office.
Oh
anytime
boy,
soon.
I'd like to be president
Doc
for
Cohen
a year.
2024.
Just let me at it.
Just 1 year.
Give me the Oval
Doc for
Office for
2024.
1 year.
Yeah.
That'll be the end. That'll be the end of joint employer. That'll be the end of card check.
Yes.
That'll be the end. Oh my God, I could do so much. You know,
Yeah.
that would be the end of all of the middle layer of government.
Excellent. So what sort of legacy would you like to leave?
You know, I think the legacy. Pardon my voice. I just had surgery about 10 days ago, and it was right here. I had my throat cut, and I know what it's like. I know a lot of people wanted to do that. I think the legacy would be I made a difference. You know, a positive difference. What really makes me go these days, I get phone calls on a frequent basis from people who say, Doc, my name is so-and-so. I don't know if you remember me or not, but I worked at your store at the Willowbrook Mall. And I wanted to call and thank you because you taught me the meaning of respect and work ethic and responsibility. And I just graduated from medical school or law school, or I'm an accountant, or I opened my own plumbing business, or I did this, and you helped me learn the basics.
I love it.
That's what turns me on.
Mm-hmm.
And to
Yeah.
get when you get those kinds of calls from people you've put into franchising, who call you and say, thank you for putting me into this system, that should turn you on.
Mm-hmm.
Because that means you helped somebody create a career and create a successful family and a means to support that family or themselves.
Beautiful.
And
Yeah.
I think that's what I would want to do.
I like that. Good. So we only have a few more minutes left, but another good question came in here that I think we should ask. So, there's obviously a lot of, differences between, when you first got into franchising as a young man, and the young men and young women that are getting into franchising now. I think they call them, are they millennials or are they Gen? I don't even know what they're alpha
Well,
now, or what are they back around in the alphabet?
Well, first
But-
of all, the main difference today is that prospective franchisees tend to be a lot more sophisticated than I was. I was very fortunate they didn't ask to see my financial statement because if they had asked, I didn't know how to do a financial statement. I had no money, but I could fog a mirror, put a mirror under my nose. But today, prospective franchisees are a lot more sophisticated. And we didn't have gens of anything back then. We just were people. We didn't fall into an alphabet. Today's generations, they want it now. They don't want to wait. They don't have the patience to wait. A lot of certain, I don't know if it's Gen Z or Y or double X, but certain generations don't want to own anything. So how can they be a franchisee if they don't want to own anything? But as people get older, they learn they do want to own things, and they do want to have money. And franchising is a great way to do it because you know what? Franchising provides everything you need to be in business, as we say, for yourself, but not by yourself. In a lot of ways, I was by myself at the beginning because these guys didn't know retail, but they sure knew something about franchising. But today, I think it's a lot tougher. You have to deal with all these different generational characteristics. And I'm not sure that I even want to be an employer these days. Government regulation is just, it's onerous. It's just onerous. And if you don't know, California just just enacted a law for franchised fast food employees. Minimum wage is $20 an hour. I'm selling cookies for $1.50. How can I pay somebody $20 an hour to sell them? And so I think it's harder today, but still, franchisors, like any business, you have to adapt. You have to roll with punches. You have to learn how to deal with the people who are out there today. You don't have to deal with, I was the first employer of most high school kids. That was my responsibility. Teach them responsibility, teach them ethics. Today, I'm not sure that those people, I'm not sure what they're looking for. But I'm 84 years old. I'm not employing anybody.
And they're still people, right? And I think that's what you're
people.
getting at. What I'm hearing, is that this is a people business.
Yeah.
No matter what age it is, what product it is, so treat people, like they're people and not commodities, and that's how you win in franchising.
Well, if you want to know the secret to my success is people. And how did I treat people? I treated people like they were family. So, in the fast food business, turnover is huge. People last less than a year turnover. I don't even know what the percentage is. I had in my management team, when I sold the company the first time, half my management staff, all the way down store level, had been with me 10 years or more, and half of them 20 years. You know what they got? If they'd been with me 10 years, they got their choice. All expenses paid trip to Hawaii, or an all expenses trip paid to London. 20 years, they were getting 5 weeks vacation. 10 years, they were getting 4 weeks vacation. When they were out sick, I didn't charge them sick days. If they were on salary, they didn't get charged sick days. We had a manager whose house got flooded. We helped that manager. We helped her buy new furniture. We loaned her money against bonus to buy new furniture, and I never expected to get it back and didn't care if I ever got it back. That's how you have to treat people and make them stay with you. And they did. And if you want to have a successful business, that's what you have to do. You have to treat your people like you would treat your own kids or your own family, because that's the secret. I didn't make myself successful. I had a team that made me successful. They get the credit, not me.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, Doc, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning.
My great pleasure.
Absolutely.